Last time we ended at a dinner table with somebody saying, "Can you pass the salt?" Here is a sentence that means almost exactly the same thing. Couldn't you possibly pass the salt? In Russian, that second one is the polite version, the careful, high politeness way to ask. Translated straight into English, Ogierman points out, Brown and Levinson classified that same sentence as rude. Welcome back to How Languages Work. Today, why you can be a perfectly polite person and still come across badly in your second language, what the numbers actually show, and how to fix it. Part 1. Politeness is not a feeling, it is a system. Penelope Brown and Stephen Levinson gave us the standard model. They borrowed a term from Irving Goffman, face, the public image you want other people to grant you, and they split it in two. And in that model, asking somebody for something is a small attack on their face. You are taking a slice of their freedom, so languages build machinery to soften that. Please, could you? Sorry to bother you. Here is the part that catches everyone. Every language we have looked at has softening machinery of some kind, but how much of it you are expected to use and which pieces is completely different from one language to the next, and nobody hands you that manual. Part 2. Somebody actually measured this. Eva Ogierman collected written answers from over 600 students, then analyzed 400 of them, 100 each in Britain, Germany, Poland, and Russia. Same scenario for everyone. You were ill, you missed a lecture, and you need to borrow a classmate's notes. Here is how many of them reached straight for a command. Lend me your notes, rather than a question. 4% of the English, 5% of the Germans, 20% of the Poles, 35% of the Russians. Her own summary of that pattern is that directness increases as you move from west to east. Same favor, same relationship. Nearly 9 times the rate of direct commands between the British students and the Russian ones. But now the correction, because this is where the popular version goes wrong. It is not that Russians bark orders and the English ask nicely. In all 4 languages, the most common choice was still an indirect question. Nearly 2/3 of the Russians use one. This is a dial, not a switch. Part 3. So where do the misfires actually come from? The first one is who the sentence points at. In English, about 3/4 asked from their own side. Can I borrow your notes? In Russian, 96 out of 100 pointed at the other person. Either could you lend me your notes or just lend me your notes. That sounds like a technicality. It is not. Can I borrow makes the request about you and your need. Could you lend puts a spotlight on them and what they are going to do. English pragmatic says that spotlight reads as pressure. The second one is negation. In Ogierman's Russian data, every single conditional could you request was negated. Couldn't you? Wouldn't you be able to? In Russian, that negation softens. Carry it into English and, to my ear, it arrives sounding wounded or passive-aggressive. The third one is the word please itself. And this is my favorite because part of what makes a whole group look blunt turns out to be grammar, not attitude. Out of 100 requests, the English said please 16 times. German said bitte 19. Russian said pожалуйста 22. And the Pole said proszę 3 times. 3. But hold on. Those 4 numbers are not doing the same job. Russian pожалуйста only attaches to commands. So 22 is 22 out of 35 chances, not out of 100. And Polish proszę is not a little word like please. Grammatically, it is a verb. I ask. It is a request in its own right, so it cannot sit inside another request. the way please can. So part of the reason the Poles look blunt here is that their word simply does not go there, and they made up for it elsewhere. The Polish answers had the most elaborate thank yous of all four groups. And the fourth, because English speakers do not realize they do this. When the English asked, 81 out of 100 gave a reason. The Russians, 43. But the Russians were not being abrupt about it. They softened somewhere else. 19 of them promised to give the notes straight back. Part 4. So how far can we push all this? Be careful. This is one scenario on one written questionnaire with 100 students per language. There is no real conversation here, no intonation, no time pressure, no actual friend on the other end. German reports no significance tests, and she says plainly that the study is based on a limited amount of data. 2 more honest notes, and both are hers. She points out that this particular scenario is one where everybody tends to be indirect. So in other situations, the gaps would probably be wider, not narrower. And she wonders aloud whether Western influence, since the fall of the Iron Curtain, has already pulled the Polish and Russian answers closer to ours. And the model itself is contested. Brown and Levinson claimed it was universal. Researchers working on Japanese and Chinese pushed back hard, arguing politeness. There is less about softening impositions and more about knowing your place. Others have pushed back on the pushback. It is not settled. Part 5. What to actually do about it. First, the reframe, and I mean this. If you have ever been told you sound blunt in your second language, you were probably not being rude. You were running your first language's politeness settings on new vocabulary. Researchers have a name for it: pragmatic transfer. It is not a character flaw. Second, learn the form, not the feeling. You already feel polite. What you need are the specific moves the new language expects. In English, that is mostly 3 things. Ask from your own side. Reach for could or would when the favor gets bigger, and give a reason. Third, and this is the cheapest trick in the video, mirror. Notice how people ask you for things and steal the exact wording. You are not being fake. You are collecting the local settings. And the hard part, nobody will ever tell you that you sounded rude. They will just quietly decide something about you. That is what makes this one so difficult to fix alone. And it is one of the things a teacher is genuinely for. My Italki link is in the description. Because the real cost is not the awkward moment. It is that people quietly conclude you are cold or pushy or evasive, when the truth is that your grammar of politeness has not caught up with your grammar of sentences yet. Your homework. This week, catch one request aimed at you in your target language and write it down word for word. Then use that exact shape yourself. Tell me in the comments what you caught. And if this has explained a few awkward moments, subscribe, because next time, why the most common verbs in every language are the broken ones, and the mathematical law that predicts which irregular verb dies next. Sources are below. See you in the next one. Nos vemos.